Hey guys, it's Iris Illusion, aka Aaron Bailey, coming at you with another fun makeup tutorial. And if you want to watch me go from this, using Lust for Dusk color palette, to this, be sure to stick around for all my step-by-steps to get to my signature style makeup. Using the Love for Dusk palette by ColourPop to give this more sultry, kind of smoky look, along with a fun, nude-centered, purple-lined lip. And if you guys do like the video, be sure to like and subscribe to all three of my channels at iris_illusion_2020 at Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I hope to see you guys again, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And until then, see you guys later. Jumping right into the tutorial. Anyways, jumping into the tutorial, we are going to be using the ColourPop Lust for Dusk eyeshadow palette with these cool toned neutrals. Much like any canvas, you want to be sure to use primer. This helps to give your face a tacky base for the foundation to stick a hold to, using the same three primers from the last tutorial, as well as using the Rimmel Better Than Filter foundation in the shade Fair. I'm using this on my brows and sideburns to make sure there is a little extra coverage, as well as giving my skin a little bit more prime to hold to. Jumping into my usual foundation combo, which is the Maybelline Superstay Activewear Foundation in 112 Natural Ivory in the LA Colors Long Lasting Matte Foundation in the shade Natural. Jumping into contour next, I'm using the Revolution Eye Bright Concealer in Warm Chestnut as my deepest shade, and then topping off with the Langmani Liquid Contour in Light to Medium. And I'm buffing it all together using the Milani Cream Foundation in Sand Beige. This just to help give the contour a little bit more definition and dimension, having your darkest towards the back and then your lightest going toward the front, which would help to slim down the forehead. Remember that contour conceals while highlight reveals. It's all about playing with the light and shadows of the face. Jumping into highlight next, I'm using the Rimmel Multitasker in Porcelain as my highlight. It doesn't necessarily have to be this stark. You can use a color very similar to your foundation shade. I prefer mine to be very dramatic to show all the details in the makeup. Jumping into brows, I'm using the L'Oreal Infallible Full Face Concealer in Mocha as my brow gel base, as well as an angular brush just to draw on the brows. After getting the brows set in place, I'm using my concoction of Airspun setting powders to set the upper half of my face so we can work on the eyebrows and then the eyeshadows next. Going into brow powders next, I'm using the Hard Candy Insta Bronzer in the shade Cocoa as my base tone. This just to give my brows a little bit of structure before moving on to the more details. Using a Wet n Wild liquid liner in H2O proof black brown, I'm using this at the edges of the brows, mainly the backs, to have a stronger, more defined edging where it's faded in the front but more strong in the back, as well as setting it with a darker powder. Going in with an LA Colors eyeliner marker to give some brow hair details, as well as making sure that the ends are sharpened and precise. Before going in with the Lottie London Arch Rival in the shade Ebony to give a little bit more dimension to the brow hair. This just to achieve a more faded front while having a strong structure in the back. Cleaning up and shaping out the underside of the brows, I'm using the LA Colors concealer in the shade Fair. This helps to have a strong brow highlight, as well as giving my brows a little bit more structure and definitional shape. Before finally setting the brow highlight with the La Mercier Pressed Translucent Powder, which is a white base eyeshadow, to make sure that my brow highlight is very stark and contrast. Going into the eyes next, I'm using my usual combo, which is the Profusion Neutral Base Pigment and the NYX Ultimate Eyeshadow Base in Fair, and buffing it out with a complexion brush. Jumping into the Lust for Dusk eyeshadow palette, I'm taking the shade Take the Lead, which is a cool toned gray eyeshadow, and giving our crease its initial shape and style, which is my traditional cut crease. Next up, I'm taking the shade Twilight, which is a darker gray, and we are defining the crease a little bit more, as well as giving our winged corner a little bit more definition and dimension. And then we are taking just a little bit of black from the Ulta Beauty eyeshadow in the shade Late Night to really define that crease and giving our corner a little bit more drama. And then, of course, using the Revolution Cut Crease Canvas, I'm cutting the crease as well as giving my eye a little bit more shape. You can use a concealer for this, but this is just what works best for me due to its high viscosity as well as blendability. I am then going to be setting the lid with the shade Night Lovers, which is a metallic shimmer shade, to really give a more eye-catching attention to the lid, and then setting the inner corners with the same pressed translucent powder. A tip for helping to keep your eyeshadow sharp and precise, I use a little bit of Scotch tape in order to keep things clean, precise, and sharpened. And with that being done, we are going to be moving on to the bottom half of the face. Going back in with the Rimmel foundation, I'm just prepping my under eyes and my nose specifically just for the primer, as well as getting it prepped for the highlight. Going in with my usual highlight duo, I start off with the Maybelline Activewear Concealer in the shade Fair. This helps to sharpen not only the eyeshadow, but as well as making sure that my under eye is bright and cleaned up and ready. And then going in with the Rimmel Multitasker once more, specifically around the nose and the bridge, just to make sure everything is brightest in the center and faded out towards the edges. For nose contour, I'm using a straight edge brush with the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Foundation Stick in Warm Chestnut to initially draw out the shape, before using a little bit of the Shoe Glam Liquid Contour in Cool Tan and a buffing brush to buff out the edges. Going in with the Hard Candy Glamouflage Foundation in the shade Beige, I am just starting off with my foundation base. This to help give a little bit more coverage around the beard area the most. And then buffing everything out once more using the same Maybelline and LA Colors foundation. And to be sure to draw this down your neckline to make sure everything is blended out and not just looking like a mask. Going back with the same three contour shades as before, I love using these to really etch out my cheeks to give a more fuller appearance. This is what drag queens as well as makeup artists use to really chisel out the features of the face to where it shows more of the natural features we were either born with or we may not have. This helps to really fake it until you make it. And remember to always try to blend things out. You don't want everything to be as harsh unless that is your style to go to. I prefer to have everything as blended as I can while still maintaining a nice, fierce position. Going into the liquid blushes next, I'm using the B Color Liquid Blush in Coral Crush as my deepest shade, and then topping it off with the Profusion Blush Power Hour in Strawberry Mimosa, giving you a more subtle yet pinky tone. This is a really fun color combo to play with, especially if you're wanting to do something a little more on the neutral side. Setting my face once again with my Coty Airspun Concoction powders, as well as brushing it off and dusting it with the Rimmel Cosmetics pressed powder in the shade Neutral. You want to make sure all of it is blended and dusted out before going in with your powders next. Hitting that nose contour again, I'm using for highlight the Physicians Formula Bitter Butter Illuminating Powder that has a slight white shine to it, but not too much. For contouring my nose, I love using the LA Colors Shape It palette that has a nice neutral cool toned shade, Unfortunately, it doesn't have a name, but it's the perfect amount of coolness and warmth without it looking too much. To really slim down the nose, I'm going to be using the Essence Cosmetics 16 Cover and Last Powder Foundation in Porcelain. And then for the under eye highlights, going in with my quintessential loose powder, which is the Wet n Wild setting powder in the shade Pink. For my complexion, a pink under eye base really does have a more natural-esque appearance compared to translucent, which is normally white. Most translucent setting powders have a white base to it that has a weird off-put contrast compared to something that's pink or banana. Kicking off the powder contours, I'm starting off with the Hard Candy Instant Summer Bronzer in the shade Toasted. This is more of the starter tone for my contours. Hitting into the deepest shade is the NYX Can't Stop Won't Stop Press Powder in the shade Deep. I'm specifically using this in the back pocket of my cheek as well as the lowest point to give a little bit of definition and buffing it out with the same brush as before. Going into the medium contour, this is the L'Oreal Insta Bronzer in the shade 200 Fair. This would be considered my medium tone, which sort of buffs everything out together. Topping off the bronzers, I'm using my Charlotte Tilbury bronzer in the shade Medium to dust everything together to where it keeps everything in a blended but dimensional appearance. Hitting into the powder blushes next, I'm using a mixture of the NYX Sweet Cheeks Matte Blush in Rose and Play and the Buttermelt Blush in the shade Getting Butta to have this more neutral, pinky kind of tone. Not too much, but not too excessive. And then just dusting everything off together, blending all the colors together, and dusting off any of the set powders that I was using to bake the under eye and the sides of my nose. Jumping into the shimmer shades, I'm using a mixture of the Maybelline Master Holographic Highlighter in Hollow and the Wet n Wild Alice in Wonderland Highlighter in Curiouser and Curiouser to have a nice shimmery chic. Shimmery chic. Going into the under eyes next, I'm using a white eyeshadow stick to open up my waterline. This is the Hard Candy eyeshadow stick in the shade Whiteout. Starting off with the under eye shadow, I'm using a liquid eyeshadow from the Hard Candy Liquid Eyeshadow Nudes in the shade Cake. This is a neutral color that I'm using to give the definitional shape firsthand. And then setting that liquid eyeshadow with a mixture of Take the Lead and Eventide from the Lust for Dusk palette to have a more neutral under eye. Using the smallest amount of the black eyeshadow, I'm just smoking out and defining the under eye to have a more widened appearance. This is mainly my signature eye style. Then dipping into the LA Colors Wickedly Glam cream paints, I'm just using the white shade to really open up my inner corner and give a more exaggerated appearance. Then jumping into liquids, I'm just topping off with the e.l.f. liquid eyeliner and just forming out a very exaggerated winged cat eye, if you will. Nothing with the inner corner, just an outer corner and pushed out. For my lip combination, I'm initially starting off with the Maybelline Superstay Matte Ink in the shade 105 Explorer. Blotting in the center, I'm using the Lottie London Slay All Day liquid lipstick in the shade Squad, which is a fun neutral tone, and just blotting my lips to really blend out the edges. To give a little more dimension, I'm using the Wet n Wild Liquid Catsuit High Shine lipstick in Late Night Done Right. I'm darkening out the outer edges of the lipstick to give a more sultry appearance. And And then topping off my lips with the LA Colors Holographic Lip Gloss in Glazed Donut. After cutting my lashes with the Essence Lash Princess Curl and Volume Mascara before placing on my lashes, I go over them one more time using the Rimmel Scandalize Mascara to make sure everything is coated and evened out. And after a quick wardrobe change, we are at the final look. This is my Lust for Dusk glamorous eyeshadow look, as well as my quintessential signature makeup. I hope you guys enjoyed and hope to see you guys soon. If you did like this, be sure to like and subscribe to all 3 of my channels. See you around!